Okay, welcome everyone. This is the September 10th, 2024 IDA board meeting. We have a quorum and I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item of business is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Does anyone want to move to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Any discussion, edits, adjustments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next, financial statements. Mr. Kernan?
Starting off with the balance sheet, at the end of July, our total assets measured $4,029,000. That's a decrease of $1,548,000 between June 30th and July 31st. The biggest change was in the cash position, and that was created by a situation with pilot payments that were received initially in June and then dispersed in July. That's the reason for the large change in the asset base. The payables, current liabilities measured $152,000 at the end of July compared to $1,665,000 at the end of June. Again, the major reason is a pilot payment. Our total equity was $3,855,000 compared to $3,890,000 for June. A difference of $35,000, a negative change, and that equates to the net loss for the period of July of $35,000 for that month. On the P&L side, total ordinary income measured $212,000. Total ordinary expenses $266,000. A net ordinary loss in this case was $53,000 for July. There were no other items in other income or other expenses. Net income again was a minus $53,755 through July 31st. That's a change of $35,000 between June and July of this year. When we look at our detail on our income, agency fees measured $24,634. Seneca County was $54,000. Rents and lease income $100,000. RFL income $69.32. Interest income was $27,000, and the total ordinary income was $212,778 through July 30th. It's a minor change of $834 for the period of the month. On the expense side, our total payrolls measured $127,000, benefits $66,000, professional services $38,000. General office expense of $58.23, administrative and tech $10,000, insurance $21.56, miscellaneous expense $27.64, travel $9.45, repairs and maintenance $83.25, depreciation expenses $23.52, and RFL expense of $2,075. Total ordinary expenses for the period July 31st measured $266,000. If I compare that to June of 24, the number was $230,000, so there was a net change of $36,000 between June 30th and July 31st. Again, that's a brief summary of the P&L and the balance sheet. Ben, do you have any comments?
No, it's nice though to see that although our income is down a little bit, our expenses are really staying pretty flat.
Mm-hmm.
And
Within reason.
Within reason, and particularly with the added expense of being in this building as opposed to where we were with zero overhead.
Mm-hmm.
Questions for Bob? A motion to accept the financial statements for July.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We accepted the financial statements. Thank you, Bob. The next item is related to the Finger Lakes Railroad Corp. Sarah, would you like to introduce our guest?
Sure. So you all saw I wrote quite a lot in the briefing memo about this, and I want to just start before I introduce them with a little bit of history. So there is an existing pilot agreement with Finger Lakes Railroad. It's meant to expire June of 2025, but because of the way that the taxes work, if the pilot expires, they would actually be paying full town and county taxes in January of this coming year. That agreement, when it was originally done, was in 1995. It's been renewed roughly every 10 years and is actually an agreement that was negotiated jointly between the 6 counties that the railroad operates in. So us, Onondaga, Cayuga, Ontario, Yates, and Schuyler. There have been some discussions with the other counties. Obviously, we still are all separate IDAs, so have to consider the projects sort of separately with our own applications. That is what they're here today to talk about. So Joanne and Eric, please take it away, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, I'm Eric Betke. I'm the president of Finger Lakes Railway. I joined Finger Lakes in August, so I'm very new to the role, and I don't know my way around, but I'm very happy to be here.
I'm Joanne Armstrong-Brooke. I am the general manager of Finger Lakes Railway, coming up on my 18th year with the company on Friday the 13th. And glad to be here.
So if you could maybe give some background on this project. Everybody's seen the application, but maybe you could talk a little bit about Finger Lakes Rail, who your customers are, you know, and kind of what you guys do and what your need is in particular for a renewal or a new pilot agreement.
So when we started operations back in 1995, we took over a failing and highly distressed property. And I think many of you probably have heard that story before. The pilots were essential for us to actually get a functional railroad back up and operating. We have an infrastructure that is in many ways dated, and we've been updating it along the way. So there's sections where there could be 100-year-old track. Still functional, still works, but it does have limitations as far as how heavy a carload we can pull across it. So I'll throw some numbers out there. Hopefully they make sense, but a modern car that CSX or Norfolk Southern wants to pull, they want to maximize their profits in the pull, so they're pulling a 286,000 pound car. So 286 would be sort of the number we throw around. Portions of our system are 286. We want to get fully up to 286 because it brings economic value to our customers.
So is that still in the category of light rail or is that heavy rail?
No, the 286 is heavy rail.
Okay.
We have 263 on our system as well, which is sort of the older standard. And it just takes time to get ourselves modernized. And we've been working on that over time. That is a key function for us because we get better pricing, you get better pricing per car to be able to get products in to serve various customers on the line. And so, so that was one part of it. Some of it's been upgrading signals. We did have, when we first started, there was a bridge that had us disconnected between Solvay and the entire rest of the system that we had to replace. So now, over the last 29 years, we've put a substantial investment into the infrastructure, but there's still a lot of work to go. We have 130 miles of track, that takes time to be able to do that and operate a business. The other aspect, so that's kind of the infrastructure side. There's still a lot of work to be done there. We do have a large grant project that's going to go on down in the Watkins Glen area. It's not your county, obviously, but so we are constantly working on those aspects. The other side of it that really differentiated us and rejuvenated the railroad was the fact that we were able to provide the service levels that were lacking before. CSX was coming over once a week to interchange Solvay and West Rock. On the other sides, people were getting spotty service, if getting service at all, just because it wasn't there and the economics weren't working for the railroad, and it was frankly disinterested. And our approach is really our customers come first. And we wanna make sensible service level arrangements with our folks that work for the railroad and for their business styles. A lot of our sidings are short, so customers can only take 3 cars at a time. So we do switches many days a week. In some cases, we've got a situation where we're doing multiple in a day. And we can't do that, from an operational standpoint without the support we get through the pilots. It's kind of critical for us to be able to provide that level of service to keep those businesses running and our customers happy. But that has a trickle-down effect, as you guys know, throughout your economy and your communities. You've got businesses and you have jobs, and the infrastructure we provide, and the service we provide cascades into jobs that the businesses we serve provide, and payrolls that then disseminate out through your communities, fostering income. So, the pilots I view is essential for us. It's hard to find a good answer of what the alternative is as far as an assessment of our property. So we're trying to solve that, but the pilot's a great solution for us to be able to keep delivering what we deliver to the community, so those businesses can foster and in many cases grow. So, does that make sense?
When you said switches, does that mean when you drop off cars and pick them up?
Correct.
And that's expensive because you wanna do a whole lot of cars, not just 1 or 2?
Yeah, if you look at a class 1 model, the answer is yes to that, right? So it means we have to touch it. And so when you talk about touching cars, that's
Your efficiency.
That's an operational efficiency, right? Where that hurts the operational efficiency. If you think about a class 1, a CSX or Norfolk Southern, they want to bring in a string of cars and drop it off and let somebody else do the work. We're the people doing the work. So, in Solvay or in Geneva, we get 50 cars a day that we then have to tease apart and build out into a customer 1. They're the last one on the line, so they're closest to the locomotive. And then, customer 5, those cars are gonna be at the end of the locomotive. That takes time to build and move around so we can efficiently drop them off and pull them out. And so we'll go pluck 3 out from a business, set that aside, push 3 in, and they can go on their merry way. We do that on the weekends. We try to set up our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week customers so that they can work through the weekends without being disrupted, because it's not only our bread and butter, but it's the community's bread and butter, because every business is essential in many ways.
And where do you see the growth coming? Are there markets you're going after?
Well, there's always growth opportunities. I'd say there's a lot of mature customers on our properties. We've got like Nucor and West Rock over that way, and we've got Owens over in Geneva. Those are all very mature businesses. The agricultural side seems to be moving in a more aggressive way than anything else around, which is good. We've got a customer with DeLong that has many locations and a number of fertilizer businesses on the line that are bringing in products to support the growing, and then DeLong's obviously got the grain that's going out and soybeans that are going out. So I see that as big. One of the spaces that's very promising right now is the former Army Depot. We have a meeting set up next week to sit down with Earl and he has one of our former track people is responsible for the track that's in his property. They have 42 miles of track in that space. And we know that Earl's interested in a number of different things that that would increase job growth in the community. So he's interested in building a car shop where cars would come in from Norfolk and from us and from CSX, and they would go to his property to be refitted, repurposed, simply fixed, etc. He has a galvanizing facility in there that we're looking to start serving its needs. He wants to get into the car storage business, which seasonally is very large. You know, you don't need grain cars in the winter in the north, they need to go get parked somewhere. So that's an opportunity down there. And I know we know he's pursuing other development opportunities for that space. He has 1,000 acres down there. Maybe it's 980 now, because I think some pieces were carved out for other purposes, but so the intent of the meeting next week is to try to get that relationship developed, and really see where he wants to take that. He's gonna need some support from, you know, a track perspective and maybe design perspective. We'll not be doing the work, that's gonna be our former employee that's down there doing it. And getting that into a shape where he can start to utilize that space. But there's a lot of opportunity there, and I would say that's probably the biggest piece in the county.
The other aspect, and right in Seneca County would be Mr. Mayberry, Bruce Mayberry. He's developing a site now. The rail is a critical component to the operation. Right now he uses a team track in Seneca Falls. So we've had him online as a customer for many years, but now he has his own site. And I know the rail is an important aspect of that for him to grow his business as well.
Do you have an idea, can you say, one of the questions on here was whether or not should be some requirement relative to capital expenditures tied to the pilot. The fact is, you guys do a ton of capital improvements all the time. Do you have an idea what that even is? I'm sure you do.
Yes.
So my point is, I think there's a ton of capital improvements being spent on those lines all the time to get them up to par, or keep them up to par, whether required or not. And I was just wondering what that number would be.
The 5-year average for CapEx projects have run on an average of about $2.6 million annually. And then, and that doesn't include the regular infrastructure, track and signal maintenance. Over the past 5 years, that's been a $16.8 million spend just for the annual maintenance.
So we spend about 26% of our revenues on just the maintenance.
Yeah.
And then the capital is over and above that. Now, the capital gets targeted, right? So we're putting our investment in the Watkins line, so that's gonna get some focus coming up. But there's some other capital projects that we have on the list too.
That's the Watkins line going down the west side of the lake?
Yes, yeah, it's basically Himrod down to Watkins Glen.
You own those high bridges down there, don't you?
Yes, we do. They're on the
pretty.
list.
They're pretty.
They are beautiful. I did walk across the 100-foot one yesterday, or last time I was here, and it is a little terrifying when you're up there on the walkway, but you get a spectacular view of the lake from there.
Thank you.
So I wasn't a part of this organization over the last 25 years, so a lot of this is new to me. The initial sense is that the line is not as efficient as it could be to connect up with the main CSX line, which is, as I understood it, your line goes to Syracuse, which isn't necessarily the shortest path to connect to another line. Is there any way of connecting directly north to that line?
So we have Norfolk Southern and we have CSX. So CSX is in the Solvay yard. And then Norfolk Southern essentially runs from Corning up into Geneva, and then there's a stretch from Geneva that goes up to Lyons that is essentially dormant at this point in time. And so Lyons as CSX, right? So there's, CSX passes through there.
And is that line something that would be attractive to Finger Lakes?
Absolutely.
And is it just a matter of a price?
You know, so there's some things that are in the works that I can't necessarily elucidate on, but there's some things we're interested in. And, you know, that's certainly a piece. I think there's a development opportunity up there. You've got a couple of minor highways up there, or state highways that you can interchange with, not too far from the thruway. So it offers that sort of dual transportation modality that's really desirable, right? You don't want to be pigeonholed into truck only or rail only. You want the option so you can price your commodities for your business as it suits, right? If you have a small commodity, you don't want to bring in a third of a rail car. You know, you want to bring in a truckload when you need it. Maybe there's some products that you need tighter timing on to do a truckload. But that's what they call the Corning secondary, that line all the way from Corning up to Lyons. You know, we're interested in that. I know other counties are interested in that as well, so that's kind of under discussion. Now the other conversation we're having is kind of what do we do with that Norfolk Southern piece that goes south? Is there an opportunity there? We do know there's an industrial park south of Watkins Glen. It's set up for rail, but it's not interesting to somebody as large as Norfolk Southern. You know, if they pick up 1,000 cars a year, it doesn't even, you know, it's a rounding error, and it's lost in the rounding, you know, way down the line. So we love that, you know, because you know, we like all the carloads we can get our hands on. There's a second quarry down there. There's an industrial park now. But that kind of makes that whole piece all the way up appealing, right? The interchange with CSX is not something, we struggle with these things that they call paper barriers, where the class ones create these agreements that prevent smaller railroads from doing interchanges they don't want.
Yeah.
So in this case, you have Norfolk Southern connecting with CSX. It's not desirable. Even if we were operating on it, they don't want to lose potential business to Norfolk Southern going south. They want all the business exclusive for them.
So these guys work back and forth, but they also compete with each other.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's a unique aspect to their business.
Got it.
Some things that you would draw a line and say, geez, it make all kinds of sense to do this. Somebody else is saying, yeah, that's great, but you're not gonna.
Yeah, get it.
Yeah, you know, I don't know, was it 60 miles from Solvay over to Geneva, 50, something like that? You know, from Lyons down, it would be 20. Like, we would like that, right? I mean, it saves fuel and operating time, et cetera.
It's better for the shipper receivers also because our interchanges now, there's a lot of circuity in the route, meaning it has to go further east to come back west, so it puts over 300 miles, for an example, for a carload to go into Buffalo. In railroad world, there's an hourly charge on most cars and a mileage charge on most cars, so the additional fuel, the crew handling, and then the car per diem charges. So those type of things kind of bump the freight rate up for the shipper or receiver. That's why, you know, there would be, not all traffic would always go. We would still want the 2 interchange points,
Right.
depending on.
We like the options.
Yeah.
Yeah, that CSX has an odd model, and you guys can probably scratch your heads on this one, but, so anything coming from the west goes all the way to Albany. And they have a sorting yard there, and we talked about how you move the cars around the structure, right? So they dump everything there, and they tease whatever is coming into, okay, this is going to Finger Lakes, and they build a string that's gonna go to Finger Lakes, and then that comes back from Albany to Syracuse, and then it sits in Syracuse, and then when they can get their crews lined up, that comes over to Solvay for us. So that's the extra mileage she's talking about, that is built into this we don't like, but again, it's part of, we are the, kind of the flea in this deal, and the class ones dictate a lot of what happens in the pricing and how that transfers down. We try to overcome that for our customers through service. We lease 600 cars, so that we took the burden of the leasing off of our businesses onto us, and we're doing the administration for that. Yes, they do pay for it through their pricing, but it's, again, it's an administrative piece of overhead that we take on for them to be able to get them kind of the business that they need. And again, the pilots help us just, immensely to be able to provide these services back to keep costs down for the businesses, so,
As was stated earlier on, this line a long time ago became defunct. You couldn't operate it profitably. And, we're one of the larger ag banks around here. We finance a lot of agriculture. We have a lot of people that use a lot of their lines. And frankly, if it wasn't available to them, and there was a time it wasn't. So there was a lot that had to be put together a long time ago, and there's a lot that has to happen all the time to keep this profitably here. As I said, you're dealing with a lot bigger players that in some ways want to work with you, in some ways they'd like to see you out of business. And you're servicing people that, if they weren't doing that, really wouldn't have access to lines. There's nobody else who's gonna pick those up. So there's a business there, they've done a great job of improving a bunch of things. Obviously, I see it from the standpoint of the amount of companies, fertilizer companies, the crop entities, and different people that use their lines that would have a problem if they didn't have that alternative.
So there's another component of this too, and it kind of, what you just stated, kind of rolls into this. Like, what if the railroad wasn't here?
Oh, yes.
Right, so we move 16,000 cars a year, across all the counties, right? Each rail car holds about 3 truckloads worth of, product. So if you translate that, simply into no railroad, now you've got 30 to 35,000 trucks coming in and going out of your communities, creating the congestion problem, which your communities have, small road networks, right? Beautiful towns, but then you're gonna suddenly pack a steady stream of trucks. More trucks. I know you've got trucks going through here, but that's another 30,000 going through. And the Short Line Association of America did a study on the sort of impact of the short lines and their savings on pavement damage. And the study's a little dated, and I know they're reworking it now, but in 2016, the figure was $22 million were saved because short lines were moving product across the rail, taking, at that point, it was 600,000 rail cars for this, so 600,000 truckloads were taken off of the road systems, local, county, and highways. And so, I don't know what that number would be now, but it's probably, definitely more, like maybe 3 times that.
You're paying the road maintenance on your road.
Right. Now, I will openly tell you, we get grants. And the pilot is essentially helping to alleviate your own pavement damage problems. So, that all works together to save your community.
One last question. Yesterday, Senator Schumer announced that big rail car factory they're gonna put in down in Horseheads. Are you connected to Horseheads? Is that gonna make any difference to you?
No, but there is a huge rail car shortage.
Yeah, well, that's for high-speed rail. It's gonna go to California and Las Vegas.
Yeah. And we're not traveling, the speeds that CSX travels, they're 50 to 70 miles an hour. We're not anywhere near that, so we're talking 10 to 25. But the rail cars in general, they age out of the pool. So after 50 years, you can no longer interchange a rail car. Now, I can run say I have a ballast car, I can run that within the Finger Lakes Railway system. I just can't move it to another railroad. And there's a large number of box cars coming up that are big for a lot of our customers. I am responsible for another railroad in Oklahoma. We have a fleet of hopper cars that are aging out too. So they're gonna hit that 50 mark, they're limited to us, and well, you know, it's great, I can still use it on my system, but I can't give it to anybody, so how do I move my grain? So Schumer is actually a really big proponent of that Corning Secondary Alliance line. So the IDA ride we did, this was with Ontario County. Chuck Schumer's people were there. Kristen Gillibrand had a representative there, and a couple of local folks. But they're very excited about that, and they're excited about, you know, the railroad in general and trying to keep things going.
Further questions? What are our next steps, Sarah?
So that's really up to the board. I mean, we have an inducement resolution that's been drafted for this, which would essentially allow us to move to next steps. Which in this particular case would be sort of regrouping with the other 5 counties to sort of make sure, you know, the timing of applications is a little bit different. We're the earliest meeting, so we were the first one to receive an application from the company. The others are receiving theirs or will be very shortly. So our plan would be to regroup with them closer to the end of this month.
You have any idea
Sort of get
where
on
they're
the
at?
same terms and then start scheduling public hearings.
Have any idea where their thought process is at that far?
No, in terms of potential pilot terms, no. I will say, and I included this in the briefing memo, historically what's been done is that it's been a percentage of the company's annual freight revenue, and then that gets split evenly 6 ways, and then we distribute that, you know, proportionally to our towns, the county, the village, the school districts. I imagine that it would probably take a very similar sort of formula, just a question of if there needs to be any updates.
But if we do the inducement, we still have time to find out what that's gonna be.
Oh, yes, the
So-
inducement is just
go ahead.
essentially allowing us to move forward with negotiating,
Yeah.
scheduling public hearings. I will say that, and this is gonna be sort of a county by county basis issue, and Rob and I have talked about this, is the question of, whether or not we want to see new capital investment committed as part of this project or not. So the way that the application is presented is this is enabling the company to continue doing business, continue serving the businesses here in the county, and that there's inherently economic value in that, even if it's not a specific new rail build out somewhere in Seneca County. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, you know, but that's sort of the application that was presented. I know in some counties that they're gonna have sort of a different push. In Schuyler, for example, I know they specifically want a new rail crossing for some development they're working on. So they may be pushing for those things. It's a question of if this board is sort of comfortable with the application as it was presented, then I think, you know, putting forth the inducement resolution would be appropriate, right, Rob?
Yeah, I think that's one of the threshold decisions is, you know, are you comfortable with the setup as it's been presented, which is essentially, you know, maintaining the support that you've historically provided for the purpose of maintaining these sort of tertiary economic benefits that flow through to the economy in general, or are you looking for something more specific, like in terms of a more conventional project, additional, you know, capital improvements committed to, that kind of thing?
It's just me, I look at it as whatever we can do, just based on the other business we do in this county and in the counties we're in, having a rail is critical. I also know they spend a bunch of money every year on the rails and on improvements and capital, and I think maybe some of that type of stuff you should give us a little better breakdown on maybe for our next meeting, but anything we can do to get them to spend money here and be more operationally beneficial to them, anything they can do to spend money here helps tie them here and keep them involved. So personally, I feel it's a good thing just to support it, take a look at what they're doing, get a better understanding of what they're spending. Every time they spend more money here, they're more committed. They also have their, whatever you wanna call it, your headquarters here. You have a fair amount of staff that's here. That could be, that could be up in Syracuse, that could be someplace else tomorrow. I know people that work there, they pay very well, they're a good employer, and I think keeping them here versus someplace else is also important. So the inducement to me doesn't tie us to do anything, it just allows us to move the process along. We can look at other things and change that if we want to. We don't have to go through with it, but at least tease it up and lets us have that dialogue and ask other questions. And I just think it's knowing from where that rail line came from and where a lot of short line rail lines went, keeping that one here is pretty important.
How many employees do you have?
45 right now.
The other thing to mention, and again, this is just for informational purposes really, so the application as presented makes seeker rather simple for this project, and the fact that there's no new construction specifically being proposed. So for the purposes of seeker review, which is necessary in order for us to ultimately get to a final incentive package, we could classify it as a type 2 action with no real review needed, which is what we did for the DOT grant that we applied for on behalf of Earl Martin for the rail upgrades at the depot. If this board feels like they do want a more traditional project, that would be a much more involved seeker review with us likely having to be lead agency. So just something to sort of be aware of, just so everybody has kind of the information at hand.
So when you say that lead agency for the 6 counties or just Seneca County?
Just Seneca. So it seems
each
like
one
the
would
approach
have
is
to do
gonna be
that.
that each county will,
That's your night-
essentially, if the applications look like this for each county would say, okay, it's a type 2 action, needing no further review. It's sort of simple, you put that in the resolution, sort of cut and dry, and you're done. But if you're saying, okay, we specifically wanna see a new rail spur built out or new crossing or something, and that new construction is specifically part of this project, and that's gonna require a much deeper review in order for IDA incentives to be awarded in that particular county.
Yeah, just overly complicate everything when, definitely it's a very capital intensive, very maintenance intensive industry. It's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily recommending that we do that,
No.
I think personally this
Appreciate
application is presented, especially, and I included this in the briefing memo, but a lot of the companies in Seneca County that rely on this are very small, Eric mentioned the bigger employers, Nucor, Guardian's one of the bigger employers, but those are sort of on either side of us. We have a lot of agricultural businesses
It's
in
Steve
Seneca
Blauer's
County.
fertilizer operation.
We've
out in
got
Hull.
Blauer's Ag, we've
Wow.
got Finger Lakes
He has
Agronomics,
one in Warwood.
Yeah.
and the
Huh?
He has the
industrial
one in
park,
Warwood, I think
which
you
is
mentioned, so.
Yeah.
a big factor of them going to the industrial park was being able to get rail, and they have multiple cars in there a day. Liquid Products is doing fertilizer, so there's a lot of, Mayberry Farms, the new soybean roasting facility they're putting in. All of those companies are in Seneca County. And without a small railroad here, I should say, they would not have rail service at all, because economically it wouldn't make sense. It'd be like the industrial park down south of Watkins Glen that is not worth serving for a big, big rail company.
Further discussion, questions? So we have on the table the proposal. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the inducement resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a
Okay,
second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Kelly, a roll call vote on this.
Mr. Brusso,
Yes.
Mr. Brownell,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Kime,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Lot,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley, and Mr. Kircher absent. Motion carried.
Okay. Thank you.
You guys are free to go if you'd like. We still have some other business to discuss. But thank you for your time. And we'll follow up once we've had a chance to reconnect with the other counties and we'll kind of go from there.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Okay, next.
Today is Railroad Day because we have to, so as you all know, we were awarded it's approximately $1.5 million passenger and freight rail assistance program grant through the state DOT. This is the grant that is gonna enable Mr. Martin to do the rail upgrades at the depot to serve the galvanizing plant and some of his other projects. So we finally gotten some draft agreements from the state, and essentially right now we're in the period of getting things approved for execution. So what we're looking for, and Rob has drafted a resolution, the state is essentially requiring this resolution from the board saying that we'll adhere to the contracts with the state and that the funds for the project will be essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, spent sort of privately, I mean, they say by the IDA, but obviously it won't be by us, it'll be by the company before any reimbursement can be sought from the state, because like most state grants, it's a reimbursement grant. So that's the resolution. We also have a draft grant agreement that we would be proposing to sign with Mr. Martin. So there would be sort of agreements for us to manage on both sides, just ensuring that, you know, there's really no risk coming to the IDA as part of this. We're simply a pass-through entity, and that, you know, the compliance and the payments and everything to do with the actual program is essentially Earl Martin's company, and not really falling on the IDA. We're managing the paperwork at this point. Rob, do you have anything you want to add to any of that?
No, I think that covers it. I mean, basically, the structure is the IDA signs an agreement with the state to take in the, you know, administer the grant, and the purpose of the agreement with Earl is to pass those liabilities onto him so that he's responsible ultimately for all that stuff and indemnifying the IDA and that sort of thing. So that's the structure.
And he's prepared to do that. He's verbally committed.
I assume so.
Yeah, assume so.
He'll need to be if he's not.
Yeah. Okay.
So they mentioned a repair yard down there. There was a repair yard there and they
One
went out.
time.
Do you know what happened to them?
I mean, the yard's still in the company.
The yard's still there.
But they had an accident or something.
They had an
Didn't
accident.
Somebody
They
was
shut-
hurt.
Yeah,
They were sued.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to know,
yeah. I don't know if that put them out or not.
I don't know. They were a big
or if the
company from the
business-
whole,
yeah, yeah.
all over the US. doing
I don't know
repair
how
yards.
big the amount of work they did was there, and if they just decided to address safety issues, whatnot, they're gonna have to spend a fortune, and they're just doing it someplace else, I don't know. It was too bad, they actually, hired people and had people working
Yeah.
there, and they did a fair amount of work there, but
And how long ago was that?
I wouldn't have
6
said
years
this was
ago.
10 years ago, so.
Yeah, before COVID. There was a guy that lived in Seneca Falls
Yeah.
that drove by and stopped in the shop once in a while.
Yeah.
They would need
I
help.
mean,
Off time, we would get out and do something with
it
them.
certainly was 10 years
So-
ago, and it probably was there maybe 6
Yeah.
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, our
Just
neighbor worked
curious.
there.
Discussion, further discussion? Okay, we'll need a motion
This grant is for Earl's rail that's inside the depot, nothing along East Lake,
Correct. So the stuff along East Lake is Finger Lakes Rail.
right?
And as Eric mentioned, they're meeting with Earl, and they've been kind of working with them all along, because
Right.
obviously the improvements that he wants to do and the things that he's gonna wanna transport are gonna have to connect to Finger Lakes Rail. So everything's gonna have to be done sort of in tandem so that it's all, you know, the rail can accommodate what he's looking to ship. And they seem to be on the same page with that. So this grant is specifically just to Earl's property at the depot.
And once he takes control of the liabilities on that, who has the oversight from the state on him?
Well, so we're sort of, I guess, do you mean in terms of the grant or you mean in terms of what he's actually shipping?
What he's shipping and how he completes his project.
So in terms of how he completes the project, I mean, we're partially there as sort of an intermediary helping to administer the grant. Ultimately, it's also up to the state, and so part of what we still need to fully flesh out are the, you know, specific final terms and all the agreements with both parties. But there are usually checkpoints essentially before final payment can be made from the state, and that, you know, you have to have fulfilled the project. There's some sort of audit involved with that.
I think they're probably gonna be more tied into, did they spend the money on the project?
There's all kinds
Then-
of usually
then the quality
receipts and
control.
things that are required, final reporting. I mean, it's very involved, and we will have to be part of that because we're gonna be the ones essentially submitting and reviewing the documents to the state.
These
Which
guys
we've done
would get a lot
before.
more scrutiny on the type of products, the security of the rail,
Right.
that kind of stuff on their tracks than probably is gonna be on Earl's.
Yeah, this is really gonna be
Private.
on the, in terms of the grant, it'll really be on the fulfillment of, did you, you know, spend the money? You know, can you show proof of payment? There might be requests for things like pictures or site visit or, you know, any of those types of things to make sure the project was actually done before the state cuts the final check, essentially.
And this is all, they've gotta spend it all before they get any of it.
I think so, if I'm remembering
Typically, but I
right.
don't know on this.
I'm pretty sure they have to spend it all. I don't 100% recall. Sometimes the state will do it in tranches where you spend a portion, you can seek reimbursement for a portion. But yeah, it is a reimbursement grant, so he'll have to spend it and show that he did.
Would he be eligible for a loan from us to finance that until he got
I
paid
don't
from
think
the
he'll
state?
need it. I mean, you know, they've
And I
planned
almost
this
think it'd be too
project.
much hassle for short-term in and outs, you might as well, and we don't finance Earl, but it'd be easier to go to a bank and get short-term funding to go through all that for short-term funding, and Earl probably is not gonna need it anyhow.
I mean, they've been very meticulous with planning this project. They came to us, you know, seeking the grant application a little bit last minute. I mean, we ended up pulling this together, if you remember, in a matter of a couple of weeks, with the help of a firm that we use on our loan program underwriting, and has helped with other grants before. But, you know, John Gadsby, the gentleman that he hired that used to work for Finger Lakes Rail, is very familiar with these projects. So they've been, you know, very good about getting the information together that they needed for the state. I mean, that is what was used really for the state to draft the documents. So they've got a good handle on things, and obviously are very familiar with this type of state funding and how to administer it. And, you know, I have every confidence that they'll comply and help us get what is needed for the reporting.
Just thinking in terms of safety,
Yeah.
you know, making sure he does what he's supposed to do.
Any other comments? Okay, so we have this agenda item, resolution is item 4. Anyone want to make a motion on this resolution?
Yeah, I'll move.
Steve, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Kelly?
Mr. Brusso?
Yes.
Mr. Brownell?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
Mr. Keim?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lot?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley and Mr. Kircher absent, motion carried.
Okay. Jeff's absent. Ernie, can you tell us what's going on in the county?
Looks like quite a bit for tonight's meeting. Budget adjustments and infrastructure products. Waste management, we just got the big book last meeting. Bridge project over in Trumansburg Creek. Grow Seneca is gonna be starting back to here in the next month or so. So that's what's going on for tonight at the meeting.
Questions? Okay, thank you, Ernie. Other business?
I think we had a couple items, right? Do you wanna start with the?
It's a little early to talk
Okay.
about financial statements. I mean, the subject is, Bob and I have been discussing alternative formats for our monthly financial statements that, with a goal of illustrating kind of our operating performance and segmenting the report so we can see unusual items that tend to create sort of a noise in our basic operating performance, so that we can see very clearly each month, and we can track very clearly each month whether the way we actually generate revenue is easier to follow on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. So Bob and I are working on that. Bob's made some suggested changes. We're getting there. You know, maybe in the next meeting or two we'll have something.
The other thing, we are actively seeking new board member applicants. So we have put out a press release and an ad in the Finger Lakes Times. We're looking for applications by September 18th, I believe it is, in anticipation that the governor may sign a bill that passed the state assembly and the state senate this year. We are doing specific outreach to school districts and to labor unions because the legislation essentially requires that IDA boards have either a school superintendent or a school board member and have a union representative on the board. And again, that's not been signed by the governor, so it's not official, but we're sort of anticipating that it could be delivered to her and signed before the end of the year. So we're trying to make sure we do some recruitment specifically with those groups as well. But if anybody knows of anybody that might be interested, you know, please let them know that we're accepting applications right now.
The schedule, the ad will run with a deadline of September 18th. We hope we can interview sometime between the 18th and the 1st of October. And in a perfect world, we might have recommendations for the County Board of Supervisors at their meeting in October. And if not in October, then in November.
And I think the goal ultimately would be to have new members sort of in waiting attend the December meeting, not as voting members yet, but sort of, you know, let them get acclimated, let them participate in the discussion with them actually sort of taking their board seats officially as of our January meeting.
We are also competing in some ways with the county's new local development corporation, the LDC, that's been underway for a while. So there were probably 10 to 12 applicants for board seats on that entity. I sat through the interviews, and I think we might see some of the names that came up for the county's LDC board come our direction. They're getting first crack at it, so we need to still, I wouldn't say, they're looking for a board of 7 members. I think they'll get 7 or close to 7 good, solid, qualified members. I'm not sure the ones that didn't make the cut there are necessarily a good fit here. I think for the school board, we can assume for the education representatives, we need to reach out because it's a small pool if it's school board members or principals.
Superintendents.
Sorry.
So even smaller, because
Yeah.
there's more principals.
So that's a short list for the county.
Yeah, so I've been doing, emailing the superintendents, asking them, you know, to share it with their school boards. And
You
again, we'll
you
be doing
need
the
a
same.
school superintendent or somebody. Do you need one from every school that
No.
you're involved with? Just one?
Just
No.
one.
Okay.
Just one.
Good.
Yeah, otherwise our board would almost be entirely
Yeah.
school.
Educators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that recruitment process goes. Thinking about how small a pool it is, it does kind of make me nervous about the fact that the governor could sign this legislation and we could be stuck with this requirement for the long term of having to,
Forever.
you know, constantly
Yeah.
have someone with that, you know, other commitment that very well may not be interested or have the time to serve here. But we'll deal with that, you know, as it comes. As of right now, we're just, you know, moving through the recruitment process, so.
So the lady that's usually here,
She's with the Carpenters Union, so I do plan to reach out to her and say, hey,
that was
you
my
know.
point. I thought she represented a union, so.
Yep, so we're gonna be doing direct outreach with them as well, to solicit candidates.
Has she put her hat in the ring?
No, I haven't actually had a chance to email her yet. It's happening this afternoon, so I'll let her know. I'm not sure what her specific role is. Obviously, she attends a lot of our meetings, so.
I thought she'd also turn that in as to some paper or someplace as well. I didn't know that's the only reason she was here.
Yeah, I think it's mostly because she's trying to get, leads on potential, projects for
And not pro or con, I just wasn't totally all you sure of what her.
So I guess there's nobody on the board already that is a member of a union or school board? Steve, you're not?
But
Nope, nope.
is it a school board or is it a?
It's a school
So-
board or a superintendent.
School board.
Hey,
You're gonna have to
You
be,
were, weren't you?
No,
School board?
God.
No, I
yeah,
thought you
you're
were.
not gonna totally dictate it, but you're gonna have to be very careful as to
Oh.
who you put on here and where they're coming from and,
What their agenda
are they
is.
here
Yeah.
to stop economic development, or there's enough
Yeah.
people to do that. There's not a lot of people that are out trying to do economic development. And, if we split things up, county, IDA, people on different ones that are for and against certain things, and you get the wrong people on it,
Messy.
pretty soon you just get in a quagmire.
Hopefully we can,
Avoid that.
make this an opportunity for, some of the school districts that aren't as aware of what we do or the benefit we provide to the community. Hopefully it's sort of a chance to bring them in on this more. It's a little intimidating because we've had a lot of turnover lately with school superintendents in particular. So I've got a good relationship with South Seneca superintendent and had one with Romulus until he retired. But we're in some ways a little bit starting from scratch because we've got 3 fairly new superintendents. But again, I'm hoping this is maybe a chance to kind of educate them more about who we are and what we do and really the benefit we can provide them from a, tax perspective.
Okay, other business, anyone? Sarah? All right,
Do you want to say anything about Willard or no? There's no updates really.
not really, I wouldn't say.
What's that?
All right, motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Second, all in favor? Thank you.